Hello everyone, welcome. This is ITV Gold Live and I'm your host Aditi Lamba. Joining us today, we have with us the Democratic candidate for Edison Mayor position, and he's also the Vice President for the Edison Council. Let's welcome on the show Councilman Sam Joshi.
Hi Aditi, how are you?
I'm
Thanks
great.
for
How are
having
you
me.
doing?
I'm great.
Thank you so much for giving us your time today.
Of course. I'm happy to be here.
Yes, great. We have so many questions for you, so let's go right into it, Councilman. My first question to you has to be, you have been serving as a councilman for a while, especially last year you saw what happened in Edison and in New Jersey and in the rest of the world. What have been some of the repercussions of COVID-19 on the Edison community? Where do you think this community is struggling the most right now?
So the pandemic has fundamentally changed our economy as we know it, and not just our economy, our education system, but how we are as a society. Everything that we do has fast forwarded a couple decades. And as you can see right now, we're doing this virtual interview. We found that the pandemic has changed our economy because everything is now internet based. Everything is and that includes the education system. You know, schools are overcrowded, but at the same time, students are being forced to learn from home at times. It's the economy has changed because retail businesses are now learning that they don't need to have as much of a large retail footprint. They're more tailored towards how they can provide transportation and how they can invest in other revenue sources that are tailored around technology rather than someone physically going somewhere.
Right. And just talking about the economy, Councilman, I have to ask you, small businesses, which are the heart of the economy, especially in a township like Edison, play a huge role in contributing back. They're facing so many things right now. They've been facing issues since last year. How are you going to tackle that? And how much are you going to invest into these small businesses?
So fortunately, my running mates have been at the forefront of assisting businesses, and they're going to continue to do so. There's a lot more work that needs to be done. Restaurants, as we know, have had a huge hit in the past year and a half. And what we're trying to do is make sure that the COVID relief funds from the Biden package get allocated specifically to these small businesses, as well as the making up for revenue loss within the township. This way it doesn't impact, we don't need to have a greater tax source from our taxpayers. So we're actively working with our state legislators and our federal legislators to make sure that the COVID relief funds reach not just the municipality to alleviate any tax revenue loss, but also for businesses as well through grants.
Right. And how much help is kind of needed right now from the state level as well as federal level for this township?
It's the full impact of it is yet to be determined, but we are estimating an approximate $7 million of a loss.
Wow.
But like I said, the COVID relief funds should be able to offset the overwhelming majority of that loss in terms of tax ratables that may potentially have been lost.
Right, and just talking about taxes, we are talking about the state of New Jersey, often criticized for having really high taxes. My question to you is, how are you going to tackle that in the Edison community, and would you bring taxes down? That's the major question.
So I'm running on my record that I'm very proud of, and I understand that New Jersey is one of the highest, or is the highest in property taxes throughout the whole country. I recognize this, but I'm running on a record that I'm very proud of. I have voted against tax increases in the past, especially during the pandemic, and I understand the hardship the families are going through. I know how to balance a budget, and I look forward to serving as mayor to be able to bring clean ratables in town, as well as efficient government that would reduce our overhead costs, especially by investing in technology, which would naturally be able to, over the course of 3-4 years, reduce the amount of overhead that we have, especially by cutting the amount of red tape and the usage of employees who would otherwise, a computer can make up for and supplement the work of employees as well.
Right. You know, Councilman, now I want to talk to you about a very important issue that's been concerning Asians and South Asians across the country, the rise in the anti-Asian hate. We've heard of crimes across the country. We're hearing of, words that are being placed on the Asian community. My question to you is, how much of the South Asian community do you think is impacted by this anti-Asian hate? And if so, what will you do to combat that, at least in the township?
Look, the rise in hate is absolutely deplorable. Edison is one of the most diverse communities, not just in New Jersey, but in the United States. And I'm proud to say that I was born and raised in Edison my whole life. I'm a thoroughbred Edisonite, you can say. And I take a lot of pride in the fact that I have friends of all races, religions, and ethnicities. That's just the way that I grew up. We didn't view race, religion, or ethnicity first when growing up. We looked just at who the person was for what they are and their moral character. That's what I think makes Edison so special. But like I said, it's deplorable, and I'm glad you asked this question because we can't ignore the fact that there's a huge difference between myself and my opponent, which is the master at weaponizing hatred. He did this when he was he's been labeled as the mastermind behind the 2017 racist flyer. But he also, if you look at his messaging and his running mates from the top of the ticket to the bottom, they tend to weaponize hatred, and they know what to say to incite people and make them feel uncomfortable. And that's really what their message is in trying to get people out to vote. And I'm just completely opposed to that.
Right. What would you say to them if you could say something to them about these racist flyers, their team?
It's deplorable. I don't even think that some of from the top of their ticket, my opponent's top of the ticket is a known racist. He's been on an apology tour, but even after he apologizes, he continues to make racist remarks. It's on his Facebook page right now. It's well documented. It's been in newspapers, and it's just disgusting. In order for Edison Township and the wider community to heal as a municipality and as a culture here, we have to move past and get above the hatred. We have to accept the fact that in this election, there's different styles of politics. My opponents is all about recognizing and weaponizing hatred, and I'm just the exact opposite.
Let's just go a little bit into it. I have a lot of questions on other issues, but I would like to explore this a little bit more with you. The opponent that you have is also Indian American. So, and Edison has 40% population South Asian, and a huge part of it is actually Indian American community. So now, how are you handling the contentious fight you guys have been having against each other and the campaigns? What has been the impact of that on you?
As someone who was born and raised here my whole life, I see myself in the students and the children, my own peers, and I see an opportunity where the people that, it's a culture clash, not just within the Indian community, but rather one that fundamentally understands what Edison is all about. Because you, Aditya, as you know, and I'm drawing an assumption here, but we know what it's like to be, I'm proud to say that I know what it's like to be 100% born and raised American. I'm very proud of my American culture, but at the same time, my heritage comes from India, and I know how to merge those two. And we've been able to, successfully, people that choose to embed themselves in American society as they should know how to be able to do that. My opponent doesn't. My opponent represents, to be honest, he represents everything wrong about the political system, and he represents a style of politics which perhaps is acceptable elsewhere, but just not here, not in America.
Just talking about the South Asian Community, Councilman, I would like to ask you, what do you have particularly planned for our South Asian community, in terms of their increase in visibility, their voices getting heard, them being recognized? What are some of the things that you would like to do for the community that gave you so much?
I view this race, especially between my opponent and I, as a big moment, most especially for the Asian community. We have the ability to decide whether we want to go years backwards or years future and accept what the future is going to be. Like I said, I represent the people that choose to embrace America and what makes America great. That is what I'm all about. I represent a new generation as well, while also keeping in mind my heritage, as you do as well, Aditi. And so I'm just proud of that. I'm proud to be running right now, and I hope that on June 8th, the voters will also see that the right direction to move into is one by embracing what their children's values also are. You know, I say this all the time on the campaign trail. Hutamaro Chokrochu, I am your son. I'm no different from your son, daughter, niece, or nephew. You know, in the Asian community.
Right, but there is some confusion because there are two Indian American candidates, so it kind of divides the community, as you're saying. What do you say to the people who may be kind of against you right now and why they should vote for you?
Fortunately, my campaign is doing extremely well, and that's top to bottom across the board. We have every walk of life that's coming forward and supporting our campaign. It comes down to the same thing that I just said. If although this race is between, is heavily towards myself and one of my opponents, we need to acknowledge the fact that I represent what America is all about. I represent the reason why our parents' generation came here in the first place, which is the American dream. I'm so proud and humbled and honored to be in this position right now. You know, my parents came from India in 1987, and I was the firstborn in America right here in Edison, New Jersey. So for me to even have this opportunity where every single state and federal official in New Jersey that is high-ranking official, North, Central, South Jersey, has come out publicly supporting me is something that I'm very proud of, and I think it goes to show that my campaign represents true American ideals that we should be proud of.
Governor Murphy has actually given you his endorsement, along with many senators who have also come out in support of you. What do you believe they have seen in you? And when you speak to them, I'm sure you have conversations, what are they expecting out of you?
I'm proud and I'm incredibly humbled to have the endorsement of almost every elected official from North, Central, South Jersey of high rank. And the reason why they came out is because there's a couple of reasons. One, they've known me for a long time. If you read some of the endorsements that have been made, it's not like I've been involved in Edison's government and Middlesex County's government and politics since I was 14 years old.
Right.
I started off as an intern under Mayor George Spadoro. I worked under Mayor June Choi, Mayor Rosigliano, and now side by side with Mayor Lanke. And I'm proud to have all of these endorsements because they are doing so acknowledging my integrity. But more importantly, it's not just about the endorsements. It's the fact that in this field, in government and politics, your relationships matter. The reality is that I will be able to utilize my relationships and maximize my relationships with state, county, federal officials to be able to pick up the phone and let them know what it is that Edison needs. And I can deliver more resources, grants, and funding that is desperately needed in our township. And I can do that better than anybody in any one of my opponents right now.
Connections are everything, and you need that support and that involvement from everyone. Let's talk about a little bit more issues, Councilman, while I still have you here with me. Schools. Schools have been in a huge limbo since last year. We're still trying to figure out if children are going to go back to school in the fall. There have been a lot of questions that were raised about the fact that not everyone was able to get resources and or access to schools, resources, supplies, and more. How are you going to ensure that every child in the Edison Township has access to education, and the fact that, and how are you looking at fall for this year?
Well, when you're saying access to education, it really comes down to, fortunately, we have one of the best education systems in the country. And I'm a product of that education system as well. And I'm very proud of my, being an alumni of it. But more importantly, you're right. When it comes down to access, it comes down to how much internet access you have. One of my single biggest pushes that I plan to have in the administration within the first 100 days is to get a feasibility study done for municipal broadband. Fortunately, there are several elected officials from throughout New Jersey, including the governor, including the United States Senator, and the Senate President and Assembly Speaker, that have publicly come out supporting my municipal broadband plan. The reality is that Optimum is just not working, and it's not going to be working. The only solution is to have our own network that provides an alternative to Optimum as we know it. I'm proud to have, thought of this. I'm proud to have worked with other legislators in making sure that we'll be able to push this plan forward. And I'm thankful that the other ranking officials, especially throughout the state, will assist in funding this plan as well.
Yeah. And how much funding do you need?
So it's about $90 million
Wow.
over the course of 40 years.
Wow.
And fortunately, because we would be potentially one of the first municipalities in New Jersey that would do it, I would be looking towards our county, state, and federal officials to also help subsidize part of the plan as well. So it's not going to be entirely coming out of Edison taxpayers' dollars, but it is the future. The reality is that there's only two options. Throughout the entire country, internet service providers in 99% of the footprint of the entire United States of America, they do not compete with each other. You can look this up on the FCC's website. My plan directly calls for an alternative to it. So you can, if you love Optimum, keep it. If you don't, you'll have an alternative to it. And the alternative, I'm going to be working directly with other elected officials to make sure that we're not paying the full cost of it. And we'll have a feasibility study done so that taxpayers are also well aware of exactly what we're getting ourselves into. But people should also know this, that municipal broadband has been implemented in states throughout America. Tennessee, California, Colorado, just to name a few. And in each state, in each municipality within these states,
Right.
municipal broadband ends up being the largest revenue generator for the municipality outside of taxes. So it's not just about addressing our internet issue, but it's also about addressing our tax-based issue. This is a new source of revenue that we can invest in. It is the future, and we need to get it done.
Yeah, looking forward to a good future here. Another big issue that's been concerning a lot of citizens and also residents of New Jersey, Councilman, is the issue of gun reform. Unfortunately, this year saw so many shootings across the nation, and there's a lot of debate about gun control, gun law, gun legislature. How are you looking at it in the Edison community, and have you seen those kind of cases happen in the Edison community as well?
Well, we defer to what the state does, but I work closely with our state legislators to make sure that we have sufficient, and it's not sufficient just yet, but we're working towards more background checks. We support it 100%.
Right. And now I'd like to ask you about Black Lives Matter, Councilman, because that movement has been huge since last year. It still continues. It's asking for racial justice of so many people. Do you support them? And do you think that perhaps our community should be an ally?
Of course, but what it really comes down to is Edison is uniquely positioned in this discussion because Edison has gone through police reform in the last 2 decades, and that's something that we should be proud of. where we were before and where we are now. We've made significant strides in our police department. I'm a firm believer that we should have the highest training, the best training for police officers. We should invest as much time and energy and resources as possible for de-escalation. Edison Township was actually one of the first municipalities and one of the first departments in the state of New Jersey more than 10 years ago to have body cameras implemented. And a lot of the discussion that we're seeing around the country right now, we can actually, if there's one thing that we should be very proud of, it's the fact that when it comes to implementing a lot of what municipalities and the public wants on a national level, Edison Township had implemented body cameras more than a decade ago, and that's something that we should be proud of.
So do you believe that when you're looking at the law enforcement and you're looking at the officers, I have to ask you, do you believe they're being held accountable for their actions? Because the huge fight in the country right now is the fact that police officers are not being held accountable. So what's your take on this?
So we have, like I said, we've made a lot of strides in our police department, and I am proud of those changes that have been made over the course of the last 2 decades, actually. There was a lot of reform that went into our police department. I completely acknowledge that we were far from perfect in the past. But the new mechanisms that we have, the new use of force policy, the new de-escalation techniques, especially the ones that came from the Attorney General's office most recently, those are plans that, we're leading on the front. We are leading on the front, not just in New Jersey, but throughout the country with our policies, and we've shown it to be effective.
Right. We are coming towards the close end of this interview. I have 2 more questions left for you. The first one is, if you were elected as the mayor councilman, what would be on your first 100 days agenda? What are you going to prioritize? What needs the most attention according to you?
When I put on a first 100 days vision, it's at samjoshi.com. You can click on it. You can check it out, what I'm going to be doing with my first 100 days. And there's so much work that needs to be done throughout the township that I would not be able to fit it in one mailer, one flyer, one Facebook post. And so I plan to directly tackle property taxes. I plan to embrace technology, making sure our feasibility study gets done for municipal broadband, addressing the overcrowding crisis. Those are things that I immediately plan to work on, and I plan to have a strong administration that works directly with my running mates, including Governor Murphy, to make sure that we're able to maximize the amount of money that we're getting for Edison to be able to do these projects.
Right. Could you discuss some of those projects that you have coming up?
The most important thing is addressing our school overcrowding crisis. The reality is that we need a new school, and we should not be paying the high dollars for it. And my plan is through implementing a pilot program, which is a payment in lieu of taxes to be able to generate commercial revenue. And we'd be able to build a new high school with no impact to taxpayers. This is not new. This is not a novel idea. Woodbridge Township did this successfully. Woodbridge Township, and I believe it was also Carteret that did this successfully. We've had new schools being built with zero tax impact, and it's all about working with municipal government and Board of Education hand in hand, and that's exactly what I'm going to be doing when I roll up my sleeves within my first 100 days as mayor.
My last question to you is kind of personal and again deals with the community. You are very, very young. And, as you discussed, you have been in this field of politics since the age of 14, so you exactly know what you wanted. There has been a huge push on the community to get more engaged in their civil duties, to have positions in public service. So I'd like for you to address the youth of our community and give them some advice as to what they should do. And perhaps they can get some inspiration from you that way.
Sure. So I am the youngest candidate. I'm 31 years old. I'm proud of that, but I'm also the most experienced candidate overwhelmingly. I've served 2 years on 2 years as council vice president, 3.5 years on the council, which is 1 out of 7 council members. And I've served 2 years on the zoning board, 4 years on the Fair Rental Housing Authority, And even before that, I worked in the police department as dispatcher in Central Command proudly for slightly more than a year. And before that, I was always working with every mayor since, whether it's in an internship position or directly just working with them on policy. So I've been in the political governmental realm for 17 years now, and this is, make no mistake about it, this is exactly what I wanted to do. I want to make a difference in Edison Township. I'm very proud of this town. I love this town. And I've actually launched, one of my first campaign promises was to launch the Edison Youth Service Corps, which I successfully did. I had 156 interns throughout myself being a council member. It's a summer program that we've launched, like I said, 156. And the goal of that was to inspire the youth for government positions, because most of the times, especially within the Asian community, the parents will say you should be a doctor, lawyer, engineer, architect, and there's only a handful of jobs, not realizing or not knowing that there are amazing opportunities for work elsewhere as well. And I wanted to show that if you were an aspiring architect, you can be placed in the township planning department. You can, with engineering, and you can work side by side with so many different departments right here in Town Hall. My program, out of the 156, I always did a survey before and afterwards. And before the students joined my program, it was less than 20% wanted to have some sort of a government position or government role. After my program, every summer, more than 70% of them have said that they were actively pursuing a government policy related field. My goal is to inspire the youth, and I plan to do that even more as mayor than I already have.
Yeah, breaking those conventional barriers are so important, because there is so much opportunity and there's so much one can do for the community. Thank you so much, Councilman Joshi, for your time here on ITV Gold.